Hello, happiness abounder, and welcome back. So, as we continue our discussion all about just being happy, I want to bring up some expectation setting. Because not only when we're thinking that it's not a choice, going back to the first episode of this week, episode 496, when we think that we don't have a choice in our happiness and then it has to be inherent, we start to feel like we're broken if we're not happy all the time, right? Part of that is this expectation setting, which is what I want to talk about today, around being happy. Because something goes bad or south or is slightly negative does not mean that you've taken 20 steps back in your happiness journey. It means that you're human and you experience emotions. So I want to dive into that a little bit more today, specifically around the idea and concept that, you're not always going to be happy. And I know that firsthand. You would think, and it's funny because when I get interviewed on other people's podcasts or shows, I get asked pretty frequently, so is there a lot of pressure around being a happiness mentor? A lot of pressure on being someone who talks about happiness? Like, do you have to be happy all the time? And what does that pressure do to you? And I love talking about this because actually I don't feel any of that pressure. When I first started Happiness Abound, which was, a long time ago now, I stopped and I started several times because I thought that I had to be perfect. I thought that it had to be this is what happened, this is how I worked through it, and now things are wonderful. And now I can share that journey with you. And it just really had this idea of perfectionism and being happy all the time if I'm going to attach a name, a business like Happiness Abound to me. So I stopped and I started and I stopped and I started, and I had a terrible go of it until I realized that it wasn't about the perfect story and setup. It wasn't about, I experienced this, I did this, now things are wonderful, so you should listen to me. It was about the journey. Whether it's your journey or my journey, right? For me, sharing the podcast, this is about my journey and what I've learned and what I am doing, not what I've done. I do that too, but what I am doing in my daily life to continue to be happy. And when I realized it was about the journey, it took the pressure off the expectation to have to be happy all the time. Because I am a human being. And if you've listened to the show for any distance amount of time, there's probably been an episode where I have mentioned that I am kind of an angry person. When something does not go the way that I think it should go, my initial reaction is hurt. And then to hide and cover that hurt and that vulnerability and that fear, I get angry, like raging angry. And I have spent so much time, so many days, so many minutes trying and doing my best to implement the techniques and the exercises that I share here on the show. Trying my best to implement those so that I can be happier. And I infinitely am. Like, I am way more happy than I ever have been in my entire life. And it's due to the work that I've been putting in. But it's also due to that expectation that I'm going to have moments where I'm sad. I'm going to have moments where I'm angry and I'm hurt. I'm going to have these times where things aren't sunshines and rainbow. Well, sunshine and rainbows. I'm going to have those moments. And so when we talk about these foundations of just simply being happy, and we walk through, it's a choice. And are we asking the right questions to set ourselves up for success? The next component is setting ourselves up for success with the expectation that I'm not going to be happy all the time. And cycling back to making the choice instead of being like, I'm going to be angry right now and that's just who I am. I am feeling angry right now. Notice the difference there. Not I am angry. That means I'm taking it on into my being versus I am feeling angry. Something I feel can change. Something I am is a lot harder. So small adjustments and changes like I am feeling angry can separate yourself from that emotion. And then you can feel that emotion and that anger or that hurt or that anxiety or whatever it may be. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? And then make the choice to be happy. But if you have the expectation that you are going to be happy all the time the second you step into this journey, that's bullcrap. Sorry, it's not going to happen that way. It just simply won't. And I feel like that is something that when we are sold this dream of self-help, we all think there's this end destination, at least when we start. Especially because we talk about my path, my self-help journey. Using phrases like path and journey imply that there's an ending destination. But the trick is that there is no ending destination. It's just continual improvement, and then more improvement, and more improvement. And your life gets infinitely better. But that does not mean that you reach some end destination where you never experience sadness, where you never experience anger. That just won't happen. And it won't happen if you isolate yourself. Like if you are a hermit and you're like, I'm just focusing on me and I feel good, you're going to feel lonely at some point. You're going to feel what many of us would define as a negative emotion. If you're dealing with people all the time, you can't control them. You may have expectations around what you think they should be doing or how they should be doing it or how you want them to do something and they don't, and you may be disappointed. You've got to work through those emotions and understand that your happiness journey, and I'm going to stick with journey because it is ongoing, but it doesn't have a destination. Your happiness journey does not have a destination. It just only has continual improvements if you continue to do the work and you can give yourself grace to understand the basis of this entire episode. You will not be happy 100% of the time. But if we're looking at the pendulum that is swinging, and there's negative emotions and there's positive emotions, when you make the choice to be happy, when you do the work to be happy, instead of swinging mostly on the negative side, which is where you must be if you're listening to this episode, if you're listening to this podcast, you've been on the negative side. It's almost like it's stuck there and you're like, I hate this. This is so uncomfortable. This is so painful. I'm ready to move forward. I want to be happy, right? Then you start doing the work, and what happens is that stuck in the negative side starts to swing a little more easily back to the neutral side. And then it swings a little bit more and it gains momentum, and a little bit more and it gains more momentum. And then you're on the happiness side, those positive emotions. That doesn't mean that life isn't going to swing the pendulum back, but it means that you'll spend more time on the positive side and you'll get stuck. And I hesitate to use the word stuck, but your pendulum ball will hang out more in the positive emotions the more happiness work you do. But that does not mean that sometimes it won't swing back and you'll have to do the work to put it back on the happiness side. So, if you take nothing away from this episode, if you take nothing else but this, I should say, if you take nothing else but this, it's that you won't always be happy. But you can swing the pendulum so you're happy more often than not by understanding that you won't always be happy, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk about it further. I can do a video chat or email or text or direct messaging, whatever works for you. But you can find me at happinessabound.com, Happiness Abound blog on Facebook, and happiness_abound on Instagram. I would love to chat with you across any of those mediums and explain further if I need to. So that said, I'm going to leave you with this concept and idea today. You won't always be happy, but you can do the work and change it so you spend more time on the happiness side of the spectrum than on the unhappy side of the spectrum. So that said, you won't always be happy, but that's okay. That means that you're human, and it means that you're on the right path to be happier more often. So have a wonderful day, and above everything else, remember, you are capable of happiness abound.